They don't work. At this point, we simply know that they don't work. The success rate of super teams in the modern NBA is incredibly low. But that didn't seem to matter to the Phoenix Suns when Matt Ishbia made a franchise-altering decision that caused the team to succumb within the hierarchy of the league. They had it all: a superstar on the rise, a cohesive group of players both young and veteran, and the playoff experience necessary to seriously compete for the ring. They even held a 2-0 lead in the NBA Finals against the Bucks. They were so close, but sometimes plans don't turn out the way you want them to. This is the story of how greed and impatience burst the bag. This is the story of the insane fall of the Phoenix Suns. March 11th, 2020. A day that, whether we know it or not, we all remember.
And fans, due to unforeseen circumstances, the game tonight has been postponed.
The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Utah Jazz took to the hardwood of the Chesapeake Energy Arena like any other night, but they didn't play a basketball game.
The game tonight has been postponed.
Rudy Gobert had contracted COVID. Minutes later, the NBA suspended its season.
Again, all these Utah Jazz players have been in the locker room with Rudy Gobert, been touching the same basketball, they've been on the same flights as him.
Terrible news for all basketball fans, except for those of one team. As if by magic, that moment marked a turning point for a franchise that had failed to win consistently since the Steve Nash era, except for Goran Dragic's heroics in 2014. Unlike most of the other 21 teams that had been invited to the bubble, Phoenix was in a different situation. It was virtually impossible for them to make the playoffs. They had no pressure, they had no expectations, and that unlocked their best version.
The baseline gets a switch, pulling Gobert out on the step back from the corner, raising up, catch it in. 22.5, Book on the crossover, gets inside and hammers it down.
Phoenix went 8-0 in the bubble. Somehow it seemed that they had discovered the formula for success. Led by Devin Booker, they surprised all the coaches in the league with an elite system that would allow them to face the following season with confidence. And that's when management unlocked the piece that would take the project to the top. Of course, we're talking about 35-year-old guard Chris Paul. CP3 had just had a breakout season with the Thunder, finishing 7th in the MVP race. He had been an elite floor raiser in a team that ended up qualifying for the playoffs, despite the fact that the experts believed that team was destined to occupy one of the top positions in the draft lottery. And in Phoenix, the result was exactly the same. Nobody had confidence that Phoenix would be a contender. Matter of fact, most people had doubts about whether they would even be able to qualify for the playoffs in 2021.
Hair was standing up on my skin. But last night watching on TV in Phoenix, pretty damn close. And I'll tell you what, as good as the Suns are, I'm not so sure they pulled that game out last night without their fans, without the Phoenix crowd pushing them.
The bookmakers set their record at 38.5 wins before the start of the season, a record that we know in the West would never be enough to clinch a postseason spot. But with an incredible version of Chris Paul leading the way in the locker room, with the scoring ability of D-Book, and with the cohesive roster that Monty Williams had at his disposal, they were not only able to exceed these expectations, they were able to completely shatter them. Because the Suns didn't just have a stellar backcourt. The presence of players like DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and Cameron Johnson gave Phoenix athleticism a young blood, something you always need in the modern game. Phoenix ended up winning 51 games that regular season, but that was just the beginning, because after defeating the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the Clippers, they made it to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993, and for the third time in the history of the franchise. Nobody knew exactly why. They didn't have the most attractive names in the league, but James Jones had done a sublime job of organically building a team.
Yeah, what do you expect from this roster this year? You've added some pieces, Landry Shamet, JaVale McGee. What do you expect out of this roster you've created?
I mean, we're deep. You know, that's what I like about this group. I expect us to be able to really put it on some teams, be able to play deep into the season at a high level and carry some momentum into the playoffs.
And as I said at the beginning of the video, a young team, talented, charismatic, with a unique opportunity. Phoenix could become the new dynasty that would reign in the Western Conference for the rest of the decade. The following season, in 2022, Phoenix started the regular season as they had finished the previous one. Dominating. They established themselves as the best team in the entire Western Conference with a record of 64 wins and 18 losses that pushed them up to the top seed. But after beating the New Orleans Pelicans in the first round, the duo of Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic was too much for them.
Brunson on the probe, gets it to fall. A rare turnover by CP3. Brunson got it and won! Points off of Cuts, although he missed that time. Doncic in transition. Brunson again, butter!
The Suns fell in the second round of the playoffs, and the management began to ask questions. Why are we capable of dominating the regular season, but not capable of dominating the playoffs? Well, maybe the key was to have a little more patience with a team that was still extremely young. Moreover, in the 2022-2023 season, Phoenix started off like a steamroller again. They won 16 of the first 23 games of the season, and it looked like they would once again be up there, fighting for one of the top spots in the conference. However, that was not the case. Devin Booker's left groin strain kept him out of action for months. And without their leader, without the player capable of lifting the team, Phoenix sank into mediocrity. By mid-January, the Suns had a record of 21 wins and 24 losses. And although with the return of D-Book, things would start to improve.
Gets it with authority. It's for everybody to space out. Takes out his do-it-yourself kit. Raising up. Booker time!
The management saw the perfect opportunity in the perfect storm. The Brooklyn Nets had fallen. The team that was supposed to create a dynasty with the most talented big three anyone had ever seen had failed. Mostly due to injuries, but also due to certain Amazon links. Their stars were being marketed by their agents. And for the first time in a long time, Kevin Durant had the transferable tag. James Jones, GM of the Suns for 4 seasons now, knew that KD would be a tremendously expensive asset. In case of trading for him, Phoenix would have to send Brooklyn its best young players, the heart of their core. So Jones decided it wasn't the best idea. John Collins was a player who was going through a bad patch and would come out much cheaper. A mobile and athletic forward with the ability to return to his best level.
Collins with the throwdown! Another fabulous find by Young!
But Matt Ishbia, the Suns' owner, wanted KD. He wanted the big-name superstar in Phoenix, where the franchise's reputation would grow to incredible levels. And, well, Kevin Durant is also one of the best scorers in history, right? What could go wrong?
Durant off the dribble, and Durant connects.
Although Jones didn't share his vision, the hierarchy in management was clear. And with a trade in which the Suns parted ways with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and a huge list of draft assets, Kevin found a new home. Ishbia, he had gotten his way. The hype and interest in the Suns, as expected, grew enormously.
Okay, we got the first big highlight of the night.
Are you telling me that the team that had won 64 games less than a year before had gotten KD?
Three-pointer is good. Kevin Durant coming right. Keldon Johnson all alone. Durant goes right by him. Sochan on the drive, blocked away by Durant. Osman with 13 points off the bench. Durant raising up straightaway three. Money.
Without giving any of the Phoenix Stars in return, this team would be unstoppable. But the only reality is that KD only played 8 games that regular season in Phoenix due to a knee and ankle injury. Although he found continuity in the playoffs where he averaged 29 points with good efficiency, that was not enough. Nor what was surely the best month of Devin Booker's career.
Booker rising up for the win! 1.7 left, and Booker goes boom!
Averaging almost 34 points in those 2023 playoffs with an absurd 69% true shooting enough. Because the Phoenix Suns lost in 6 games to the Denver Nuggets in the second round of the Western Conference playoffs. Yes, the Suns had one of the best two-man offenses in the league. Probably the best. But without role players to support their stars, nothing they could do would be enough. Management had to do something, and Ishbia thought up a plan again. He had to find a desolate team capable of parting with their star. But this time, he had to get it right. It was the Suns' last shot. Introducing the Washington Wizards. It had been clear for years that a team could not be built around Bradley Beal. He was a second, third star who had never been a part of a truly competitive team.
Seeing a lot of active hands, and he goes off glass, and he gets it to go. Bradley Beal with his 19th point, and he is pumped.
Beyond the odd first-round exits. So there was potential. There were people who thought that in a system surrounded by better players, he could ball out.
Good look there by Barton to Beal for the dunk.
But when the Suns sent all their remaining assets to Washington, including Bilal Coulibaly, who had just been selected 7th in the draft, they were taking a leap of faith. If this went wrong, the Suns could go a decade without another opportunity like this. Well, we all know what happened. Beal wasn't the answer either. More like an added problem to the ones Ishbia already had.
Bradley Beal is a problem, and I don't think there's a solution.
The arrival of the shooting guard only served to ensure that the Suns would play a testimonial role in the 2024 playoffs.
Catches it, clears. Edwards, bingo, a three.
And second chance opportunities. You didn't block out Towns.
Because they went out in just 4 games against Anthony Edwards' Minnesota Timberwolves. Beal's contract, with its infamous no-trade clause, has gone from being the answer to a problem that takes up a large chunk of Phoenix's salary cap. And the chemistry seems to have been completely destroyed. It's no secret at this point that Durant wants out again. What we heard about during last season, it has become a reality. Even Shams has echoed that the legendary forward wants to end his time in Phoenix.
These sources believe that there will be real changes in Phoenix coming to the Suns, and from a roster standpoint, that likely starts with Kevin Durant.
So, we could say that at this point, it is a certainty. The trade of Nick Richards this season only served to make up a roster with huge structural problems. And worst of all, it seems that Coach Budenholzer has lost the locker room. The players do not fit into the roles they were assigned, and the team chemistry has completely vanished at all levels. From the players, to the coaching staff, to the management. It's hard to believe. Chemistry is one of the most underrated factors in any team sport. People think that being a GM is like playing 2K. You just need to have good players. To accumulate as much talent as possible in a group of stars that can dominate the rest. But it's not like that. It's never like that. The Suns are not the first to prove it. Since the Celtics and the Heat worked out more than a decade ago, there have been numerous attempts to form super teams. The Clippers, the Sixers, the Nets on 2 occasions. None of them have worked out. And the only reason, beyond the injuries, is cohesion. The ability of players to adapt and fight for a common goal. When a locker room lacks the necessary mentality, it will show in the moments of truth, aka the NBA playoffs. The Suns had it all. Ishbia had it all. If Phoenix became a perennial contender, the franchise's influence would grow around the world. But if there was one thing they didn't have, it was haste. With the young core of the team in charge, they were perfectly set for the future. Both Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges showed in Brooklyn that they were players with the potential to assume a much greater role than they did in Phoenix. If they hadn't been traded, the Suns would not only still have them, but they would also have all the draft assets they had before exploring the market. In short, the Suns would be in a much better situation than the one they're in right now. But we have to ask ourselves a question. So, is Mat Ishbia the right man for the job? In other words, does Ishbia have the patience necessary to be the owner of a team? Does he have the temperance necessary to allow the GM to do his job? Because in the performance of his responsibility, 2 tremendously important attributes have always been required. 1, patience, and 2, a cool head. Are these the values of a man on whom the weight of the success of an NBA franchise rests? Let me know what you think in the comments, and see you in the next video.